My name is Lauren Hollows from NOI Education Services, and continuing on with our interview series, I am here with Coleen Rivas. Now, in line with all of our other ones, we have had AI, the Google Bard, write Coleen's intro, so we'll have a read of it and see whether or not it got it right. Coleen Rivas is a passionate and experienced instructional designer and vet professional with over 20 years experience in the vet sector. She has owned and managed various RTOs and is currently the owner and director of Raspberry Training and Consultancy. Coleen is passionate about quality vocational education and the delivery and best practice of competency assessment. She's also a strong advocate of lifelong learning and believes that everyone should have the opportunity to upskill and retrain throughout their lives. Coleen is a highly skilled and experienced instructional designer and has a deep understanding of the vet sector. She's also an excellent communicator and facilitator and is able to build strong relationships with our clients. Please welcome Coleen from Raspberry Training. How did it go?
Oh, I have to thank it sounds pretty good. Sounds like a little bit of a bio that I had to write a while ago, which I always find those things fun to write, not. But anyway,
I know they're hard. They're very hard to write. It's always horrible to have to talk, like that way about yourself.
I know.
I think you did a very good job. I know that obviously we've known each other from LinkedIn a long time, and we comment on each other's posts and things like that. And your level of knowledge always comes across, really easily to people. So I think that it's probably drawn from that to some extent as well. So let's obviously start out with what is happening with Raspberry Training at the moment, because you've been busy.
Yeah, well, okay, so mostly Raspberry Training, it's small. It's me. And I spend most of my days at my desk writing assessment resources, sometimes learning resources, but primarily assessment these days. I am booked out for the year in terms of assessment writing. I just was playing with my schedule, and I'm through to January, so I've got some pretty exciting projects. I'm building the Certificate for and Diploma of Yoga, which is fascinating. It's an accredited course, so that's fun. And I'm building Certificate 3 individual support for a publisher, actually. And I'm building Certificate 3 in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural site works. Again, just assessment, and I can assure you that I'm working very, very closely with my subject matter expert on that one, but fascinating, like a really interesting qualification to write. And actually I was really excited to do that, although it's not an easy one.
Yes, very much
and
so.
Yeah. Well, what else? A few random units. I've been working on the local government training package.
Which you've done LGA stuff for a while, haven't you? Because I noticed that you've got a little bit of that on your website too. And is that kind of part of your background?
No, I'm working with subject matter experts on that. So what I tend to do is sometimes I'm writing stuff and it's copyright owned by the person who's consigned it. So those things I don't put on my website. And some of the work I do, I've maintained copyright for, but you'll notice that it's all really out there stuff, because it's expensive to bring someone in to custom write products for you. And especially with some of my clients have very specific needs, so they're working with this particular cohort or that particular cohort. And a lot of the stuff I'm doing is I have to do a lot of simulation, so I'm building big simulated role plays along with simulated organizations behind these things,
businesses,
with multiple
simulated characters. And
like great big huge catalogs of policy and procedure. So I'll have a business that I've set up and I'm just building policy and procedure. And so it's when these things come out, they are built. Assessment tool sometimes comes with multiple documents and forms, and continued storylines and stuff like that. So they're not. I do wish someone would get me to do stick it to business work, but stick it to 3 business work based or something. That would make my life nice and easy. But no,
to some extent, I do find it. I mean, like we obviously do a lot of the same sort of stuff. So we only do contextualized assessment tools as well. I look at it now, and after so many years of just writing contextualized stuff, if someone said to me, write me a generic, thing, I would find it a lot more challenging, because I would look at it and go, yeah, but really, like, I need an avatar to write to, and I need to know exactly how it's going to be delivered. So in some ways, do you find, are you the same? Do you find it easier, like, once you know exactly who you're writing for and the delivery mode that you're writing for, it is actually an easier process?
I need to know exactly, like for me, I have to have a picture of the learner and the context and how this is going to be delivered. So, and it's funny, one of the most challenging tools I did last year was a very generic unit. And it was out of the LGA package, but extremely generic. And it was a work effectively type unit, work effectively in local government, I think it's called. And it's in the Cert 2, Cert 3, Cert 4 and diploma. And local government is anything from, the road worker through to the, the CFO or something like that.
To a senior person. Yeah.
Senior to blue collar to white collar. It's like a little village of different types of jobs. And every legislation, local government legislation, is different in all states as well. So I was asked to write it generically to fit all models, to fit all legislation, to fit all, and it was a simple unit. Like, if you just look at the content of the unit, the unit of competency, assessment requirements, I looked at it and went, oh, easy. This is all easy stuff. It's work effectively stuff that we've written dozens of times with, some LGA legislative stuff in there. No, I found it incredible challenging, to try and build something, because this is what I was asked to build. And that took me ages, because I'm trying to come up with
at every level would be different.
Yes. So, I had to build it quite, and I got to it in the end. But really the instructions we had to be quite, we had to assess teamwork, for example. So, it could be in a toolbox meeting, or it could be in a high level meeting, in the corporate office, it was interesting. So I definitely like, this is work-based, this is the cohort, this is what they look like. And it helps me to build around that. So all of the tools that I'll put up for sale, I have waste management, Certificate 3 waste management, work-based for council workers. That was who I, primarily wrote it for. So, in my mind, these are people working, in those things. And the legislation was in New South Wales, so I was able to, that is built for New South Wales council workers.
Yeah, it just makes it a lot easier. So much easier knowing exactly who you're writing for.
Yeah, and someone can buy that and contextualize it, or pay me to contextualize it for them. But, I can't build, it's too hard to build stuff that's, we want to meet
everyone and everything.
Yeah. So, it's, I'm writing for Cricos providers. Even when I'm writing for the publisher, we've agreed that, we're going for a model that is, Cricos / job seeker type programs, so that it's got the simulated organisation and simulations where appropriate and that sort of thing. It's built for that model.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and I know that like, obviously you're smashing out a lot of really fantastic PD topics with Belg at the moment, and obviously a lot of those are covering things like, assessment and third-party reports and, common assessment mistakes. Do you have a favorite in and around like the types of things that you deliver, or is there, what's the feedback that you're getting? Like, what's the kind of questions that you're getting through these workshops? To tell us a little bit more about that.
So much. All right. Well, I love doing the PD. So if I could just do the PD all the time, I'd be thrilled. But, you know, it's not that easy. And a lot of this comes from me is I'm an old trainer. I'm a trainer who set up an RTO and managed an RTO and managed trainers over the years, you know, who ended up learning how to write learning assessment resources because, you know, sometimes it's hard to find them off the shelf the way you need them. So especially if you have some odd ones on scope. And the amount of times over the years that I've got a lot from coaching and working with trainers and seeing, you know, people. I love it when people have grown up. I was really excited to see, and I won't say who, but I was looking at the list of speakers at the Ville Conference, and I saw 2 of them are ex-employees of mine. So I thought, that's pretty good, you know. And I love that PD. I love that, you know, you would sometimes get a trainer who'd been in the industry for 10 years, but didn't actually, you know, understand why they were doing what they were doing and what was wrong. And you know, I've always loved spending that time with people and seeing them grow. So I love the PD side of it. And I'm thinking of it as, 1, as a trainer, but 2, as that manager, compliance manager. You know, if we can sit here and we can talk to people in complicated language and that sort of thing all the time, and we all know the buzzwords, and we all, you know, people say, oh yeah, I know the principle assessment and rules of evidence, and yeah, you know what, we all did it in our TAE, but it's not what I see in run-ups and new PDs. And, you know, I was doing TAE upgrades during the, you know, when it was upgrade time. And yes. I was continually seeing people walk in who, you know, you go around the room, yes, I've been a trainer for 15 years, and then I have to stop and explain what, you know, TGA is, what, you know, what assessment requirements are, what validation is. And so those are things I think sometimes going back to the basics and really getting the basics right, I find quite, you know, breaking those things down into realistically how they work. And, you know, I was just looking at, you know, the stuff I've been developing. I was just working on stuff I'm doing for the Ville Conference. And just, I really like to break it down into why, you know, just let's go back to the principles, let's go back to the rules. Why do we need to document our observation assessments? Why do we need to write comments? Why won't tick and flick work? You know, we know they don't, but why? What is the reason? And breaking that down to, you know, this is evidence. You know, a police officer doesn't just go to a crime scene and get a checklist and go, yep, you know, there was a witness, yep, you know, there was blood on the floor, yep, you know, tick, 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 and go, yeah, outcome arrested, and then hand in a checklist to the courts. They don't do that because the checklist isn't evidence. What's evidence is the statements and the recordings and you know, the photographs taken and all of that stuff. So really taking that, you know, and you know, rather than just trying to explain it out, let's just look at it like that. You can't just tick boxes and call it evidence, because if a doctor did that, or, you know, it's not, ticks aren't evidence. Evidence is the stuff that we have to demonstrate. What was the context? What was the environment? Where did we assess this? When did we assess this? What equipment did they use? And then justify a decision. Just because we ticked a criteria, I want to know as an auditor, I want to know as a validator, what did you see? And what made you think that they were, you know, where's the evidence that backs up the decision you made? So I don't know, for me, talking about it in just really simple terms rather than trying to, you know, yeah, the standards are important and we need to know those things, but I really like breaking it down into why we do what we do.
And it's one of those areas, I mean, with the evidence part of it, like you said, it's something that people do really struggle with. Like, you know, the amount of times that we'll go out and look at other people's units and do validations, and they'll be like, well, where is it? Where is the evidence of this? Well, we've told the students to do it. I can see it's in the assessment, but where is the evidence that they've done it? Well, you see there in the student instruction, I've gone, but that's not that's not evidence. You've told the student to do it, but you don't act like, there's nowhere where you've actually said, I've seen them do it and this is what it looks like. And they'll go, oh, but if I've told them to do it, then they would have done it. I've gone, would they?
Even if they did, it's evidence-based. We're about evidence. This is why, you know, I keep pushing on about the rules of evidence. It's evidence. We need evidence to make a decision, but we also need evidence to justify our decision. So when an auditor looks at it, when a validator looks at it, that there's evidence that backs up our decisions. It's evidence-based practice, like many, many other professions.
And I mean, it's you know, the other thing that I always go to with trainers as well is I go, well, yes, but like if WorkSafe came out to investigate because, for example, someone that you trained had, you know, hurt themselves or hurt somebody else, you know, or in my early days as a trainer, I was training childcare and we rejected a student. We said that they weren't suitable for the industry. They went to another provider. They then went out within like 2 weeks of getting their qualification, they tied a child to a chair for 2 hours, right? And there was an investigation following it, and they came back and talked to us, and they were like, well, the student said that you deemed them competent. I was like, whoa, no, like, here's my letter to the student saying you should not be in this industry. You don't like children. And that was so crucial for me as a trainer in my early days, because I went, if I ticked and flicked that student, if I hadn't done the right thing, I would be responsible for what had happened to that child now. And you know, that's a lot of people look at it and go, but it's just childcare, or like, oh, it's just hospitality. And I'm like, yeah, but what happens if the person you taught to cook goes out and poisons, you know, gives half a restaurant food poisoning because they didn't know not to chop the chicken and chop the beef on the same thing? Like, you know, these things all, like, there's always dangers in every industry. And when something goes wrong, you do want to have that evidence to fall back on as a trainer, that like, I've done the right thing. There's a lot of people that don't understand that.
Yeah, it is very hard. I mean, it's a big complex, you know, thing when we talk about, you know, quality standards and stuff. But I get it. I've been the trainer with a load of assessments to do. We've all been there. We all know. But it isn't just a matter of ticking and, you know, making some comments and throwing it on the done pile, because every single decision we make is really important. Like, it's nationally recognized, in fact, internationally recognized. So when I say this person is competent, the whole world takes my word for it.
Yeah.
You know, and the community takes my word for it. And even if, you know, I'm just a hairdresser and I made someone competent hairdressing, still, I don't want my hair messed up when I go to the hairdressers. I don't want to walk out with purple hair. It could be just a bus driver or just a aged care worker or but you know what? All of those people we trust, and they are in those roles because we made the decision that they were competent. So we forget how important our decisions as assessors are and how important our job is. There's no decision or competency decision that we ever make that's just. Like, every single one of them is going to potentially change someone's life, what kind of career they can have, whether they're going to get that job or not. It's plus the community around them. So, you know, nationally recognised. That how many people can say the decisions that they make are nationally recognised? So I think we forget those really basics of how important it is to be an assessor. And yeah. Anyway, I'm probably going on.
But also, I think it's not as, like, the thing is when you have a well-designed assessment tool, it makes that whole collection process so much easier. So, you know, we do understand, I mean, you would have seen it, you know, where you've got a single unit and you've got 120 questions and you've got, you know, 365 tick boxes and 27 comments that have got to be made per student. And you look at it and you go, well, it's compliant as all buggery, but there's no
Not
way that
suitable.
an assessor is actually going to complete it compliantly.
Yeah,
It is that there is a big balance when you're designing assessment tools. And I mean, I think you having experience as an assessor and jumping back into that training role does probably really help, that you're able to look at it from the auditor perspective and the trainer perspective and the student perspective. And a good designed assessment tool can make that entire process so much easier.
Yeah, and it really can. And then, I mean, we get into, good training package writers can make that easier as well, but it's a whole other story. Because, I do think that there are some issues with some of the training packages we deal with. But yeah, look, I don't own my own RTO anymore. So, when I wrote for myself, I could cluster assessment the way I wanted to deliver assessment and build to that specific need. And I find assessment writing now, I do have to work around, someone might be delivering something where I think you really ought to be doing work placement there, but you're simulating it all, and it's okay. The training package allows it, and I can see all the stuff and I'll build that for you. But sometimes it should be a whole lot easier if you just went out and did a work placement rather than having to set up this monstrous assessment that's going to have all these different actors and doing these different things so you can gather this evidence. So sometimes I think they end up more complicated than they should be because the delivery method
has a big impact. You're right, it does have a big impact. So with you developing all of these additional documents, I mean, I know that for me and for Anawaya, obviously we're using, ChatGPT, and we're using Bard, we're using a whole bunch of the different AI technologies. That has definitely sped up that side of things. It's definitely not something where you can just plug it in and it spits out something perfectly the first time. There's a lot of finessing that has to happen. But it does certainly allow for that. How do you see AI changing the way that we go about creating assessments and training materials, in the short term, in the next 1 to 2 years, and also potentially moving forward
in the future? Doing a webinar on Monday.
I saw.
Well, I mean, and one of the things about doing that webinar is I'm not going to say I am an AI expert. I am in no way an AI expert. However, ChatGPT, when I'm writing assessment tools, I've got 3 screens in front of me, and there's one over here that is now quite often ChatGPT's on it.
Yeah.
And it's not writing the assessment tool for me. People have said, oh, well, it can take over your job. No, I don't think it can. Not in its current form anyway, that's for sure.
You're going to have to be an awful lot better.
But I do find it really helpful. So let's just say I'm going to I need to write a scenario. I like case studies for drawing out knowledge and that sort of thing. And before I might spend 10 or 15 minutes trying to think of a scenario. Now I might just go into ChatGPT and say, give me a scenario of someone doing where they have to do and it'll go, oh, great. And I'll go, that's pretty good, actually. I'll just change a sentence or two there and bang, and go. That's one way I might use it. Another way is with all of my policy and procedure, I am lucky that I do have a pretty big catalogue of that now. So a lot of stuff is policy and procedure again. I've got, lots of versions of that. I'm just going to contextualize that down to this industry and put these logos on it and adjust it. But I certainly can go into ChatGPT and ask it to, create me a WHS policy and procedure for a small cafe, and in New South Wales. And it will do that. I can often, I find it quite helpful with answer guides when I'm going through. Not that it's necessarily going to just be cut and paste, but sometimes, and that's, I always think benchmark answers need to be written when you're writing the questions, for me anyway, because I've tried to do it the other way years gone by, where you write all the questions, you think your questions are wonderful, and then you go to try to answer them and you realise that question 3 and question 17 pretty much are going to draw out this, So sometimes I'll know I want to ask this question. What's that going to draw out? I ask it the question, it'll draw, and I go, no, that's not kind of what I want to draw out there, or that's interesting how it drew that out, or it'll give me those sorts of tips.
It's almost like a little bit of a person to like, just that speaking board kind of thing, isn't it? Like if you had a person sitting next to you and going, hey, if I asked you this, what would you think? And they go, well, so and so. I go, oh, okay, well, that's not really what I thought. Okay. It's it's like another person to have a little conversation with.
It is. And there's just so many little ways that I will use it to, especially when I'm doing research on a topic. So I would never think that ChatGPT is where I'm going to do all my research and that's the end. But you know what? I don't know if you do much writing in areas where you're not a subject matter expert. And, you can say you just talk to a subject matter expert, and you should, and I do. But I need to know what to ask them before I even have that conversation. Like there's a level of, what does this mean? What does that mean? What does that look like? How does that work? And a lot of the time, I might ask ChatGPT to explain something, and then I'll go, rightio, and then check the web. Now I know what to search for on the internet to get some more authoritative information. And that will give me something. And I'll go, okay, well, what does this mean? And I find it quite helpful to help me to target in on what I need to research. And I would say that has at minimum halved my research time, just because it puts me in the right direction. And I have to check everything that it says. Like it's not,
absolutely.
I can't just accept what it says, but I can't accept, it's like having somebody who's a brains trust next to me that isn't doesn't know everything but is pretty smart. So I go, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And get that feedback. So I use it for that, like I say, to create policies and procedures, and they're great templates for all of those things, or the great starting points for all of those things. And there's more I can't think off the top of my head, but how will I'll go on.
Oh, sorry. So I'm interested, like in now that you're doing lots of writing with AI and things like that, have you started to change the way that you write assessments, like in consideration of students using AI and things like that? I'm really interested in that.
And this is the part that I find the most difficult, because I'm writing for customers, and customers may like a particular way of doing things, but also taking a step back. Yes, I know that if I just write a standard knowledge question, task now, I'm going to ChatGPT for help with the answer guides. And sometimes they give me a perfect answer. And a lot of the time it's pretty damn close. I'm very aware that a student can just enter those questions into ChatGPT and cut and paste the answers in. And that concerns me, obviously. I think we need to really consider how we're assessing. But at the moment, we don't know who's, we can't, not all students even know how to use it to start with. So I think there's ways that we should be using AI in assessment, but it does require that the learners are taught how to use it as part of the training package, as part of the training program. So the RTO does need to incorporate that into their learning program. So, for example, if I was teaching somebody, if somebody was learning how to, I don't know, write assessments.
Cert 4 who's got to write a WHS policy.
Yeah, okay. So in today's world, if that person can go in and do that job and effectively use ChatGPT and get that job done 50%, 30%, 20% more efficiently or more quickly in the workplace, there's no employer in the world that's going to say, no, you're cheating. If the outcome is the outcome, that's what it's like. We use Google. It's like we use so many of these technologies. They are just going to be tools that we use in our jobs. So we're going to have to ensure that we teach students how to use this tool as part of their jobs so that they can be more productive and they can be more competitive in the employment market.
Yeah.
So it would make sense if we teach them that we would use ChatGPT in the assessment. So if I had to write a WHS policy, it wouldn't be cheating in the workplace to start with ChatGPT, to actually go, okay, put me together a policy for New South Wales for a business that is da-da-da-da, and the issues are da-da-da-da, and, feed the information in, see what it spits out. Now, it's probably most likely not going to spit out something that's excellent and ready to submit, but it may put out something that is 60% of the way there. And now you're going to use your expertise and you're going to wind that up and you're going to get that job done. But, you might have got that job done in half the time or more. And so our assessment should reflect that. We shouldn't be saying you can't use ChatGPT. It might be, well, go to ChatGPT and get this and then take this and then refine it and contextual and do this and submit it. So I think there's plenty of, but as an assessment writer today, I find myself in a difficult situation because these students, I don't know if they've been trained. Is the RTO ready to implement those sorts of things? I can't write assessments for it if the student hasn't been given the skills. Are the learning content products and the learning plans and programs, have they caught up? And so I think that's where we need to go. We need to incorporate it. But it's hard for me today to incorporate that. I am thinking more about knowledge questions particularly because it concerns me how easy they will, how can they be authentic in the future?
Yeah.
But again, we need to have a mind shift too. Like the industry needs to rethink this, if we're going to do this differently. I mean, certainly we could have competency conversations or verbal questionings but RTOs have to be willing to do that.
Yeah.
And if they're not willing to do that,
we've implemented across all of our RTOs now. We've just updated the plagiarism collusion policy with information in and around how AI large language models can be used, and we've actually given the students examples of prompts that would be acceptable for using within assessments, and then we've given them examples of what's not. And I think we've built the first option where we pick up that it's AI is a warning. Second is look, we believe that AI is involved. We're going to need you to come in and we're going to have a competency conversation around this. And then third warning is actually that assessment gets wiped and you have to come and do the entire assessment in front of us, in person.
Direct.
So at the moment, that's how we've handled it. But a couple of the RTOs have come back and gone, hey, actually this part here where we've kind of gone, these are the prompts that we find acceptable, and this is how you could use it properly, and this is how you shouldn't use it. They're like, can we take that and email that out to the students? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like, go for it. I'm like, here's a couple of really good videos on like how AI can be used in a really positive way. So but you're right, it's all going to be about, are the trainers ready to have those discussions? Is the RTO ready to put those policies in place? So there's a lot of different moving pieces that are going to have to kind of come along the way.
And and this is, I think it's actually a currency issue in terms of vocational currency, because if trainers aren't out there learning how to use it and implementing and using it in their own work as a trainer, but also understanding how it's being implemented or how it could be or will be implemented in their industry sector, this is, I think it's a currency thing. We need to be training people how to do that. And a lot of people are just not touching it. Oh, that's not going to impact my industry. Well, you might be surprised. You could be surprised.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think
how
there's
the
very
world
few
might
industries it's not going to have an impact on.
exactly. I mean, I think, and we need to be forward thinking and thinking as trainers who are vocational experts, because they train and assess. So you are industry experts as a trainer. You ought to know. You ought to be at the forefront of this is how it's being used. This is how it will be used. This is where the future's going, because you want to graduate people who are competent and really ready to go to industry and be productive and effective,
Yeah, 100%.
So I think it's a big area. I don't want anyone to, I'm not a prompt master or anything. I find it really easy to just, it'll give me an answer and I'll go, oh, that's great, but tell me more about this. Or that's great, but don't do it like that. Do it like this instead. So to me, it was quite, what's the word? Natural, really. I just keep asking it questions until it gives me what I want.
100%.
Really.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, last question. What are you really excited to see happening in the vet sector at the moment? Or what would you hope to see?
Oh gosh. Excitement is we've got so many reforms happening. They're all going to happen. I don't know when they're going to happen. When, like when are the new standards going to be out? And when are the, qualification reforms going to be finalised? And when, and so I'm really, what exactly are the JSCs doing? Those sorts of things, because, for example, as assessment writer, I keep hearing that they might be doing learning and assessment writing. So tell me more. So I don't know, am I excited by these changes? Naturally, I am not afraid of change. So I am somebody that's kind of open to change, like I am like, as an assessment writer, what are these new qualifications going to look like? What are these new skill standards going to, I'm really looking forward to building something off the new skill standards and that sort of thing. Maybe because I'm just interested in change, and I'm hopeful that they're going to be better, that we're going to have improvements in the training packages. I'm not going to have to be rewriting the same stuff over and over again. That must drive students nuts, assessors nuts. Certainly drives me as a writer nuts, Sometimes I think, how many ways can I assess that piece of knowledge? Just how many ways can we describe, I don't know what,
Effective communication looks like?
What the duty of care of workers.
That's another one.
How many times can I assess that in a creative way? So I'd love to see, I'm hoping that there's some changes there. It's really, I'm glad COVID's over and we're getting back to, sort of, normal, some sort of normal. I think there's some really exciting edutech things there too that I'm really fascinated to find out more about. But, going into edutech, and we're talking about AI, I still go, there's so many authenticity issues that we've got to work our way through, because at the same time as AI is coming in, we're still, edutech's not going anywhere. So we're still going to have indirect assessment. And as long as we, have indirect assessment, we have authenticity issues. So, don't know.
I think it's always going to come back to what's the best way that we can support learners, and I think AI has a lot of possibilities to do some amazing things to support learners, which is wonderful. But it's never going to move away from a trainer having a relationship with a learner to build skills and validate skills in that learner. It may just be that AI changes the extent and makes that a little bit more specific to the individual, sort of a thing, which is interesting to think about.
I think there's a lot of really cool things out there, and one of the things I like about the Ville Conference is you go and see what these tech guys are doing, you're like, wow. You know, there's a lot of cool things that can streamline work for RTOs. So that's good. But, you know, there's probably more worries than excitement. I think there's a lot of, I'm not worried. Like I say, I like change to a degree. I don't want change for the sake of change, but, you know, I'm open to things getting better, and I'm just hopeful that changes that are made will actually make things better and not, you know,
more complicated.
Continue to, you know, make them more complicated, which has been what's happened in the past.
Yeah,
I think.
So if people want to find you, what is the best place to find you at?
Okay, raspberry.com, raspberrytraining.com.au. You know, I have a little catalogue of online training programs there, and they're pretty cheap, $20 to $25 each, and they're instant, you know, so it's a good little tip. It's only a small catalogue, but it's out there. You know, when I have time, I hang out on LinkedIn, so you might see me on LinkedIn. When I get a bee in my bonnet, I might write a blog. And
for the next couple
LinkedIn,
of weeks, you're going to be doing a whole bunch of different things for Ville as well.
Webinars, yeah. So I'm there's 5 webinars, one on AI, one on writing. A lot of assessment design stuff next week. So building simulated assessment. So I'm going to go into that process of simulations, everything about the simulations, third-party reports, and you know, I'm not talking about the, you know, just cut and paste from the PCs and reword them a bit, everyday performance stuff. Yeah, that's one model of third-party reports, but I think they offer a great deal of value in authenticating work-based stuff, and, you know, how I use those, particularly when I'm building a tool in a circumstance where, you know, direct observation is not actually viable. So I was writing something a few weeks ago about providing evidence in court from the LGA package. It's not viable for an RTO that may have people at a, you know, council, a small little country council, who's turning up to court for, you know, heavens knows what, and court cases, there's privacy issues, there's all sorts of things. You can't just rock in and watch someone prepare for that and present for that, and it's just not viable. So, you know, I had to build tools where we were gathering information about how things were done and whether they were done to organisational requirements. This is a really big thing people forget about. Pretty much, not, I won't say all, but most units of competencies that contain Certificate 3 and above require performance against workplace requirements, policies and procedures. Yeah, we've got to assess that.
So you're going to have workplace policies and procedures then in order to assess that.
Yes. So how are we going to confirm? So I would use a third party to say, look, can you review this work, confirm this was the student's work, confirm that these tasks did happen, that they did meet workplace performance requirements, that they did follow policy, that any explanations about policy and procedure or workplace things are correct and accurate. So at least I've got that additional evidence in front of me, because how am I going to have it if I don't, you know, have those things? So third party, work-based observation, I'm just going to say observation tasks, checklists, how to write them, and you know the stuff, the observable behaviours, all of those things. But you know, I think there's ways to write them that are flexible, that maybe are a little bit different, but they're ideas for people to look at. So yeah.
And people can sign up for those, I think, on your website and on Ville. There are the links to be able to sign up.
Just go to Ville. I've got if you come to my website, I've got a link to them, or just take you back to the Ville website. So, you know, just go to Ville, and they're not very expensive. And, you know, Ville are great.
Really reasonably priced.
Yeah, they are. For what you're getting, I recommend you go to Ville. So, you know, yeah, a few people have said, why don't you do it yourself? Because Ville a great organisation. I'm a big fan of Ville. I was a fan of Ville when I owned my RTO, when I run RTO. I was always a member. Love Ville. So I'm really happy to work with them. And, you know, yeah, do a bit, you know, sometimes people call me in to do PD with their team face to face, and sure, I might do that occasionally. So.
All right, well, thank you so much, Coleen. For everyone who does want to check out Coleen, as she said, you can go to Raspberry Training. My name is Lauren Hollows for anawire.org. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you found this valuable. Otherwise, I will see you at the next video. Bye.
See you later.